Isabella Guzman, the daughter who became a social media phenomenon after murder. Welcome back to Blood and Truth, where we uncover the dark Isabella Guzman brutally murdered her mother by stabbing her 151 times. Yes, you heard that right. And perhaps as shocking as this horrific crime were the cold and bizarre behaviors she displayed in the interrogation room immediately after the murder. But this case isn't just a murder story, because the echoes of this event created an unexpected impact on social media, particularly on TikTok. Some users mimicked her facial expressions from the courtroom. Others even opened fan pages, finding her attractive. And perhaps the most thought-provoking aspect was this: how can a person want to imitate the expressions of a killer? Isabella Guzman was born on June 9, 1995, in Colorado, USA. Her parents, Yunmi Hoy and Robert Guzman, divorced when Isabella was very young. She was only 3 years old. One of the earliest things told about her childhood was a sentence Isabella frequently repeated: "My mother abandoned us." This was a moment of heartbreak that had settled in her memory. After the divorce, Isabella began living with her mother Yunmi in the city of Aurora. Shortly after, Yunmi married a man named Ryan Hoy, and this marriage reinforced Isabella's feeling that her mother had completely forgotten about them. According to claims, as a small child, Isabella believed her mother had removed her and her father from their lives for the sake of a new man. This resentment settled and grew over time. Moreover, while Isabella was struggling to adapt to this new arrangement, her father Robert also married another woman. Homes changed, faces changed, but the loneliness inside her remained. And perhaps it was in those years that the anger within Isabella began to grow silently, unnoticed by anyone. Although there isn't much information about Isabella's childhood, it's known that she experienced serious behavioral problems from a very young age. Her relationship with her mother wasn't good even at that age. Her mother Yunmi realized the situation was getting out of control when Isabella was only 7 years old. Hoping she could correct her behavior, she sent her to live with her father. Perhaps she thought this way her daughter would be more respectful toward her. However, this decision unfortunately led to an even greater abyss. In the following years, Isabella's contact with her mother decreased considerably. During the few times they met, their relationship was at a more manageable level. Her mother chose to interpret this distance as understanding rather than emptiness between them. Perhaps this was self-consolation. Meanwhile, her relationship with her father Robert was never good. Robert noticed that his daughter was constantly irritable, rebellious, and unpredictable. Although Isabella didn't use physical violence against her schoolmates or peers, she didn't attend school most days. When she did go to school, she constantly received warnings due to her rebellious and undisciplined behavior. Her academic performance was far below poor. However, she somehow managed to pass her grade. It was as if the education system couldn't sense the approaching crisis at all. When things started to get completely out of control, the school administration also noticed the mood changes in Isabella and requested that she be evaluated by a psychologist. According to the teacher's common opinion, her parents' separation had deeply affected her personality, and a gradually growing accumulation of anger had formed within her. This suppressed anger became even more violent over time. After these events, when Isabella turned 14, she began living with her mother and stepfather again. Teenage Isabella's character had taken on a terrifying form. She talked a lot and constantly cursed at adults. Her hatred toward Yunmi had gotten progressively worse, and the fights between them grew and became more merciless. Isabella's attitude toward her mother was particularly aggressive. She no longer listened to anything or recognized any boundaries. She frequently used marijuana in her room, burning incense to hide the smell. This also bothered her mother and caused new arguments. Whenever her mother responded with verbal attacks, Isabella became even angrier. During this period, the young girl got into trouble with police for reasons like shoplifting and using alcohol at school. She was even expelled from school once for bringing a knife to school. Eventually, Isabella dropped out of high school, and her family realized they couldn't handle her alone. When she was 16, she was examined by a psychiatrist. However, the specialist said her behavior resembled that of an average teenager and that even her decision to drop out of high school wasn't concerning. But this wasn't a simple teenage issue. The expert's wrong assessment didn't help resolve Isabella's problems. It was already a delayed psychiatrist consultation. Moreover, it was believed it would improve on its own. But unfortunately, Isabella's behavior got even worse. Even her mother and stepfather giving her their own bedroom, essentially fulfilling a girl's whims, didn't work at all. Nothing seemed sufficient. Once, Isabella went down to the basement where Ryan was sleeping to borrow his fan. However, the basement was an airless and quite cramped area. The young girl had been given a quite spacious, comfortable room on the upper floor of the house. Despite this, she was still complaining. This situation showed what a spoiled and insatiable character she had. When Ryan refused her request, Isabella lost control and punched him. Everyone who knew her knew that she always had her way at home and made them do whatever she wanted. Meanwhile, Yunmi was working tirelessly to support her family's livelihood. She owned a photo studio called Porto, located in Aurora's town center, and sometimes stayed at work for up to 12 hours a day. Sometimes she would ask her daughter for help so she could learn to take responsibility. However, these requests always ended in arguments, and when the calendars showed 2013, Isabella was now 18 years old. However, with age came not maturity, but rather an increase in aggression level. On August 27, 2013, just one day before the murder, a big fight broke out between Isabella and her mother Yunmi. The spark that ignited the argument was Yunmi asking her daughter about what the neighbors had been saying recently. Apparently, the neighbors had seen Isabella jumping over the fence at night to enter the house with different men. When Yunmi questioned this behavior, Isabella couldn't control her nerves. She shouted at her mother and spat in her face. The woman was so scared that she asked Ryan not to leave her alone that night. The next day, August 28th, Yunmi saw a quite strange email on her phone. The email came from Isabella. However, it wasn't directly addressed to her mother. In the recipient section, there was a name written as Cecilia. The content of the message was never shared with the public. However, it's known that it contained threatening expressions and ended with the sentence, "You will pay." Yunmi showed this email to her husband, Ryan. Together, they decided to call the Aurora Police Department because they were seriously worried that Isabella might pose a threat to her mother. That same day, 4 police officers came to the house. Isabella's biological father, Robert, was also with them. In the backyard, the officers told the young girl she needed to be respectful to her mother. They even reminded Isabella that she was now 18 years old, and her mother could kick her out of the house if necessary. Their aim was to set her straight by scaring her a bit. Robert also talked to his daughter. He told her she needed to be more respectful and cooperative toward both Yunmi and himself. This conversation was quite challenging for Robert. Apparently, Isabella seemed willing to cooperate at that moment, at least from the expression on her face. She appeared to have realized the seriousness of the situation. Later that day, Ryan noticed a change in the young girl's attitude. She was angry about her mother calling the police, but despite this, she seemed to be handling the situation more maturely. That night bore not even the slightest trace of the approaching disaster. After the police officer's visit, Yunmi returned to her photo studio as usual. Around 9:30 p.m., she returned home with a McDonald's bag she had bought for Ryan. As soon as she entered, she asked where Isabella was. Ryan said he had last seen the young girl in the kitchen about an hour ago, but he didn't know where she was now. At that time, Ryan was eating his dinner in the living room. Yoon went upstairs to take a shower in the bathroom. Only a few minutes had passed when Ryan was startled by harsh, violent sounds echoing inside the house. Then he heard Yoonmi scream in panic, shouting, "Jehovah!" This word was a call to God, especially in the Jehovah's Witnesses faith. It's a sacred address a person uses to ask for help from God in moments of fear or desperation. Yunmi's screaming like this clearly revealed how terrifying, how desperate, and how deadly the moment she was in was. The sound was coming from the bathroom on the upper floor. Ryan panicked. He immediately ran up the stairs and reached the bathroom door. He could hear the shower still running, and the door was only slightly ajar. When he tried to enter, Isabella suddenly leaned against the door from behind and locked it on him. Ryan forced the door, even tried to break it, but couldn't succeed. He then ran downstairs, grabbed his cell phone, and went to the living room to call the police. Ryan said his wife and stepdaughter were in the bathroom, that he couldn't open the door. He told them he saw blood flowing under the door and that his wife was most likely seriously injured. Just then, another scream of Jehovah came from inside. Then the bathroom door suddenly opened. Isabella came out. She had a blood-covered knife in her hand. She made eye contact with Ryan. The young girl walked toward her stepfather without looking away for even a moment and passed by him as if nothing had happened, leaving the house. Ryan immediately entered the bathroom. The scene he encountered was of a nature that would never be erased from his memory for the rest of his life. Yunmi was lying motionless on the ground, covered in blood. Her consciousness was closed, and there was a baseball bat right under her body. Ryan called the police once more. The emergency operator instructed him to open the airways and perform heart massage. Ryan meticulously followed the instructions. However, shortly after, when he looked into Yunmi's eyes, he realized she was no longer there, that she had lost her life with empty stares. In deep desperation, he told the operator he thought his wife was no longer alive. At 10:16 p.m., police officers arrived at the scene. They found Ryan at the front door with his hands and clothes covered in blood. "My wife is upstairs." "Help," he said. Police officers who went upstairs found Yunmi Hoi's lifeless body lying on her back in the bathroom. The woman had received a total of 78 stab wounds to her face, neck, and torso. There was a large pool of blood around her. In his first statement, Ryan said that when he heard the violent sounds from upstairs that night, he thought Isabella was punching her mother. Although the young girl had experienced anger outbursts before, her behavior that night was much more savage than the previous ones. Ryan also told officers that when Isabella fled the house, she was wearing a pink sports bra and turquoise shorts. On the night of the incident, a witness also told police that they had seen a tall, dark-haired young woman with a baseball bat outside the house and that she had broken a car window. All these statements showed that Isabella had completely lost control that night. Meanwhile, the young girl went to the women's restroom of a nearby supermarket. She washed her hair in the sink, tried to clean the blood on her, and changed her clothes. She told the employees there that she had been sexually assaulted in Denver, that she didn't want the police called because "I'm afraid of my father if I'm sent home." At that moment, no one knew exactly what Isabella had done. Meanwhile, medical teams announced that Yunmi Hoi could not be saved and died at 10:28 p.m. Isabella's biological father, Robert Guzman, immediately called his daughter after hearing what had happened. He tried to convince her to surrender to the police. He also told detectives that his ex-wife had previously told him she was afraid of Isabella. However, no matter what, he never thought his daughter could one day end her mother's life. Detectives hadn't yet determined where Isabella was. Meanwhile, while trying to solve the case, they began gathering more information about the young girl from the neighborhood. A neighbor said in a police statement that they had seen men jumping into the house's garden and had called the police many times because of this. They later said they learned these were Isabella's male friends, whom she secretly brought home at night. Police later also spoke with Catherine Katie Argaida, who was Isabella's close friend. Katie usually spent time with Isabella and her ex-boyfriend Elias. She said the young people mostly spent their time using drugs. There was a detail that caught Katie's attention. Isabella had recently started showing intense interest in spiritual and metaphysical subjects. 2 days before the murder, on August 26th, Katie received a strange message from Isabella. There was clear anger in the message. At the end of insulting and belittling sentences, it simply said, "I know what you did." Katie immediately replied and asked, "What do you know?" However, Isabella didn't respond. On August 28th, the day the murder was committed, Katie received another message. This time the message was much stranger. "Astronomical ray awakened." Katie again asked what she meant, but Isabella didn't provide any explanation for this message either. Despite all these oddities, Katie said she never believed Isabella could be someone who could harm her mother. She said that although she was sometimes unstable, she had never seen her use physical violence against anyone. However, for the police, the picture was now clearer. Isabella's mental breakdown, suppressed anger, and the oddities she displayed toward her surroundings had already laid the stones of the path leading to killing her mother, Yunmi. At this stage of the investigation, police reached another name in Isabella's circle, Darian. He said he had known Isabella for several years. Although their meetings were rare, he had repeatedly witnessed Isabella getting angry at her mother frequently. According to Darian, Isabella sometimes tried advanced drugs like morphine. Under the influence of these substances, she could become aggressive. In fact, he had personally seen her use physical violence against a girl while in the same state once. Stepfather Ryan told police in his statement that Isabella had been with a young man named Elias for a long time, spending almost every moment when she wasn't home with Elias. In police interrogation, Elias said the following: Isabella suspected him of cheating on her with their mutual friend Katie. When Elias denied this, the relationship ended. Immediately after the breakup, Isabella sent threatening messages repeatedly. She labeled Elias as a liar and traitor. Shortly before the incident date, when he went to deliver her belongings, Isabella quickly opened the door and tried to attack him with a golf club. Elias's claims didn't stop there. The young man said he experienced strange poisoning right after the breakup. Both he and his mother got sick after eating food from the refrigerator. Their dog's water bowl smelled like bleach. I suspect Isabella did it, he said. However, no material evidence regarding this incident had been found yet. No one had thought Isabella could actually kill her mother, but now Darian's account of substance use, the chaotic breakup Elias experienced, and the domestic tension Ryan witnessed revealed that Isabella had turned into a ticking time bomb inside. For the police, the picture was now clear. All these testimonies and the emergency complaint made the same day led police to consider Isabella as the primary suspect in the attack. However, the young girl had disappeared, and there was no clue as to where she might have gone. The next morning, a new report reached the Aurora Police Department. A bloody knife had been found behind an office building on South Parker Road. The citizen thought this might be related to a crime and reported it to the authorities. Police teams went to the scene and secured the area. The area where the bloody knife was found was searched in detail. Shortly after, clothing pieces containing bloodstains and a backpack were also found in the vicinity. These items were evaluated as possibly belonging to Isabella. Based on the possibility that the suspect might still be hiding in the area, a scent-sensitive dog entered the area. Considering both the brutality of the crime she committed and her possible mental state, Isabella was thought to be armed or at risk of harming herself. Therefore, the teams were extremely cautious. After a search lasting approximately 16 hours, Isabella Guzman was found hiding in a narrow space under a fire escape. Her clothes were disheveled, her face was pale, but her expression was still cold-blooded. Isabella surrendered without any resistance and was handcuffed and taken to the police station. Interrogated by two detectives, the young girl gave evasive answers to even simple questions from the very first moment. She claimed her name wasn't Isabella Guzman, but Samantha Gonzalez. She said she was 15 years old, lived in Ohio, and attended Montgomery High School. However, the address gave didn't actually exist and was ironically a fictional address located directly across from her own house. This was either more than coincidence or a sign of a serious break in Isabella's perception of reality. She persistently demanded fingerprints be taken to prove she wasn't a killer, but for the detectives, there was no room for doubt. The person in custody was Isabella Guzman. The young girl tried to make a difference through her appearance. She argued that her weight was different from Isabella's, that they didn't look alike. Even when police made comparisons with photographs, she continued to deny. She gave her mother's name as Sabrina. She said her mother constantly treated her badly, that she was adopted and had never met her real father. She claimed her surname was Gonzalez and her father was Mexican. She also said she had gone out to meet her boyfriend Gabriel Adams, that he might be very worried now, but she added that she couldn't communicate because she had thrown away her phone. As the interrogation progressed, Isabella was presented with much evidence: DNA traces, security footage, witness statements, the bloody knife, but she continued to repeat the same story. Every time she was called Isabella, she tensed up and persistently said this sentence: "Don't call me that, I'm Samantha." In the interrogation, Isabella introduced herself as Samantha Gonzalez and said she didn't use drugs or alcohol. However, the marijuana found in the bedroom and the statements of those around her contradicted this. When detectives threatened to bring her father, her biological father, Robert, was brought to the interrogation room. Robert confirmed that his daughter was Isabella. However, the young girl still refused. At the end of the interrogation, she was taken to the hospital for treatment of her injuries. The person facing the police wasn't just someone who denied their crime. It was either a great manipulator or a mind disconnected from reality. In their hands were strong evidence such as bloody clothes, security camera footage, witness statements, and Ryan's accounts. All of them showed that Yoon Mi-hoi's killer was Isabella. Isabella had to testify in Aurora District Court. However, she didn't want to come to court. She was forcibly brought out by guards. At the courthouse, first-degree murder charges and 2 separate violence charges that could increase the sentence were formally brought against her. Throughout the hearing, she displayed strange expressions on her face. She made mocking smiles. In the first autopsy report, 79 stab wounds were detected on Yoonmi's body, while later reports increased this number to 151. It was also claimed that Isabella had also hit her mother with a baseball bat. The judge decided that Isabella should remain in custody without bail. While the media talked about the death penalty, the defense claimed she wasn't competent to stand trial due to mental health problems and requested psychiatric evaluation. In June 2014, psychiatrist Dr. Richard Pancher evaluated Isabella and diagnosed her with schizophrenia. It was determined that she had long-standing delusions, stared into space talking to invisible people, and laughed to herself. The doctor said Isabella believed she had killed not her mother, but another woman named Cecilia. This person was the target who sent threatening emails and whom Isabella believed the end of the world would come. This situation was an indicator of how advanced her mental illness was. Isabella argued she was innocent due to insanity. The prosecutors, with the evidence they presented and expert reports, stated that Isabella couldn't distinguish right from wrong. They said she acted under schizophrenia, paranoid delusions, and hallucinations. The judge also accepted this view and sent Isabella to the Colorado Mental Health Institute. She would stay there as long as she didn't pose a threat to herself and society. This period could last a few days or continue for life. After the decision, her father Robert described Isabella to local media as good-hearted and a good child. Her aunt Melanie Guzman said she saw Isabella as a normal teenager in their last meeting and had never seen her use violence. All these statements showed that the family couldn't recognize Isabella's serious mental health problems and had essentially left her to her fate. In 2020, Isabella's name came up again when many TikTok users began sharing videos from her 2013 court hearings. Some videos were accompanied by Avax's hit song, Geggy Sweet But Psycho. Other videos showed users imitating Isabella's strange facial expressions and behaviors in the courtroom. Thus, Isabella became a mysterious and attractive figure beyond her own tragic story. On one hand, she gained a fan base with her beauty and sweet but crazy image. On the other hand, people emerged claiming she had good reason to kill her mother. This crowd almost elevated Isabella as a killer star. Video collections compiled from Isabella's court hearings were watched millions of times. Fan pages were even opened in her name on Facebook and Instagram. This situation led to the formation of unhealthy admiration and misperception on social media. Isabella continued to stay in the mental health center, receive therapy, and use appropriate medications to keep her schizophrenia under control. Isabella revealed that she had been abused by her family for years. She said her family were Jehovah's Witnesses and that the abuse worsened when she decided to leave the religion at age 14. However, it was unclear how much of these statements was real and how much was exaggeration. Psychiatry experts emphasized that in schizophrenia and other severe mental illnesses, a person's perception of reality is significantly impaired. At the time this content was created, Isabella continues to stay at the Pueblo Mental Health Institute in Colorado. It's certain that her mental imbalances led her to a horrific and tragic act. Her mother, Yunmi Hoy's death will remain in memories as a terrible, savage, and heartbreaking event. Isabella's situation is still at the center of debates. So what do you think? Should Isabella be released or should she continue treatment? This case raises so many questions about mental health, social media's influence on criminal cases, and how we as a society view tragedy. If you found this case as disturbing and thought-provoking as I did, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe to Blood and Truth for more real crime stories and mysterious cases that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads. What other true crime cases would you like us to cover? Drop your suggestions in the comments below. I read every single one, and remember, while we explore these dark stories, it's important to remember the real victims and their families. Thanks for watching Blood and Truth. I'll see you in the next case. Stay safe out there.